Hello and welcome back to Woodworking Monetized, where woodworking doesn't have to be another expensive hobby. This is episode 14, where I have a commission piece for my sister-in-law. This is the first commission piece for a family member. I charge $150. It's a little bit lower than what I would normally maybe charge for something like this because of two reasons. One, it's family, and two, my brother-in-law decided that he was going to stain it. So at some point through the video, you'll see that all of a sudden it's stained. I just gave him the pieces, he stained it, and then I took it back and finished assembly. So at the beginning of this episode, I started with $1,452. I bought a few tools and some materials, and now I'm down to $1,030, and that's quite a difference because I spent money on a reconditioned planer, rigid planer for $280 from CPO Outlets, and I also bought 4 50-inch Bessie clamps. Now I didn't have to have these clamps, but I decided to buy them because I hope to make some other projects in the future, either for personal use or for the channel. If I would have stained it, I probably would have charged another $50 to $100, and if it wasn't for family, I would have charged another $25 to $50. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, continue watching, and I hope you like it. Thanks. So my sister-in-law wanted a hardwood for the top, and I went with beechwood because it does look like cherry, but it doesn't have that red tinge to it, and it's a little bit cheaper per board foot, and it still kind of looks like cherry as well as far as the grain goes. As far as the overall depth of the bench is concerned, on the top I wouldn't go any less than 16 inches, as you might run into it being a little bit top heavy, especially if you have little kids on the bench. Say what you want about the Bessie brand and the parallel clamps in particular, but I do think that they worked well, and they give me a lot of capability moving forward as far as how much width they can hold. Now you can see that I used my Craig jig that I got in the previous episode to use as a clamp as well as the glue dries. I don't think I actually got footage of it, but after they do dry, I rip the ends of each side so they are at 90 degrees and you don't see any of the red paint that's on that middle board and some that's on the other side. And I did not include these other 24-inch clamps that I used to add more stability because I purchased these on episode 11, I believe, where I batch out some American flags. So after this video, go ahead and check out that one. Or just trust me. Either way works. I will agree that the number of holes I put in the underside of this bench top is a little bit overkill, but I thought I'd err on the side of too many and not use them since they are not going to be showing anyways. For the legs, I went with some hemlock fir, which is simple and it's relatively light and inexpensive as well. And for the structure and the apron, I went with the hemlock fir, and whenever I use a 2x4, I always try to rip them down so they don't look like 2x4s. Here's my reconditioned rigid planer that I purchased on CPO Outlets, and I went with this model in particular, and there are other models as well that allow this, but this one allows for a third-party helical cutter head. So when my 3-blade cutter head eventually needs replacing, I'm going to upgrade to that helical cutter head. And when assembling these legs, I like to offset the cross pieces just a little bit. I did 3/16 of an inch on each one. That gives me a little bit of wiggle room so they don't have to be 100% flush. And I'll be the first to tell you, you do not need to purchase any plastic shims. I actually purchased these when I was putting up my plywood walls inside my shop, and I thought I'd just use these since I had them. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that you wouldn't want to make the bench top any less than 16 inches, and that's because of this very reason. In order to get these Craig screws in, you need the lengths of these cross pieces to be a certain amount to allow for those Craig screws, unless you're just going to glue and clamp. While I don't have a lot of experience with putting tabletops and bench tops on, I have had experience with these tabletop fasteners. They allow for the wood movement as the temperature in your room changes, and they seem to work well enough. Here I am adjusting the blade of my table saw to allow for both the height from the top of the apron and the depth of each cut to allow these fasteners to fit in the apron and connect to the top of the underside of the bench top. And you'll see here I don't leave much more than 1/4 of an inch overhang from my bench top to the structure. And now I'm assembling the aprons to the legs using a clamp, and then once I have that structure assembled, then I place my bench top down and my structure on top. And now that I have my cuts for the fasteners in the aprons already, I just put in 6 fasteners, I think. Here you only see 4, 2 on each side, but I ended up adding 1 more per side, so 6 total. And here's the finished product, a 4-foot bench for my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. Thanks for watching.